Welcome to the Every Brain Matters podcast called It's Just Pot. What's the problem? Today, we have an Every Brain Matters exclusive testimony from Adam, a young man who's experiencing cannabis induced psychosis, and his mom, Mary. If you are viewing this video on YouTube, some of the faces have been blurred to protect their identities. This content may be difficult for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Psychosis is an umbrella term for significant mental disorder characterized by the loss of connection with reality. Cannabis psychosis can include paranoia, hallucinations, delusions, suspiciousness, a sense of grandiosity, and dissociations or feelings of detachment, disorganized, disturbed thoughts, and inappropriate emotional responses, irrational behaviors. The THC in marijuana, even in low concentrations, can cause cannabis-induced psychosis. Youth are more at risk to psychosis, but adults are not immune. And we can't predict who is susceptible to psychosis. Some experience symptoms after using THC only a few times. For those who experience a transient psychotic break, the rate of conversion to a chronic psychotic disorder depends on the drug being used, and cannabis tops that list with a 47% conversion rate to schizophrenia. Methamphetamines is 32%. Hallucinogens are 28%, and opioids are at 21%. We want to officially welcome Mary and Adam, and we appreciate you both sharing how marijuana has affected your life. That Adam is diagnosed with cannabis-induced psychosis and is healing from a recent hospitalization. Adam has asked to share his testimony today because he wants other people to understand that marijuana can cause hallucinations and delusions. And in the past, he's been in denial about this. Adam has also shared with me that he's working hard to figure out what's real and what's not real, and I acknowledge him for his hard work. I also want to acknowledge Mary's hard work and her dedication to her son. Describe what your life was like prior to using marijuana.
I mean, disclaimer, like my memory's still coming back, so I'm not gonna be 100% on this one. But before marijuana, I was kind of a like a rough kid. So we played really hard, and like we played with airsoft guns, sticks, and stuff like that. And I had a few close, tight knit friends. I had friends outside of that too, and I was kind of a social kid, but I didn't really have to be social, and things just came really easy for me. And with school, it was super easy. So I was a 4.0 student. I always got A's. I didn't really have to memorize anything. I would just learn it from the teacher and then put it on the page. It was really easy for me. Yeah, and I mean, right before I started smoking, I had a girlfriend, and I was, going after a job, and I basically had no worries or no problems, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and then how old were you when you started using marijuana?
I was 18, but that's one of those things, like I might have started using at 17, but I can't really remember. But the first time I remember using marijuana was alone in my room, and I bought a bunch of marijuana and kind of experimented to see how far it could go. And this is the spring of my senior year, and my grades were already pretty bad because I went into this college that was essentially like a grad school. So we worked on one thesis paper throughout the whole thing, and we did science experiments all the time, and we worked on a boat. And I couldn't keep up with the really, really smart kids. My teacher said something that like really brought me down. She said, the the biggest drop from GPA from your high school to your college was my high school, which was Salt High School. So we had the most inflated grades, if that's how you want to look at it. So basically, I was like, "What the heck? I'm getting 4.0s, not because I'm smart, but because I have inflated grades." And I remember my junior year of high school, which would have been my first year going to this. It's called the Ocean Research College Academy. And my first year going to that, my grades slipped up pretty bad because I was just having to compete with the super smart kids from the area because they kind of draw in the best of the best. And anyways, my senior year, I kind of just gave up, and I was like, well, I mean, why don't I just start smoking like all the cool kids? And that's what kind of drew me in. And I was like, well, I mean, that's what most kids do these days. They just kind of hang out and smoke weed. So I gave it a try, and it sucked me into my bedroom for nights on end. I mean, it took me away from my relationships, and I was not really hanging out with friends as much. I was more kind of stressed out about everything. I mean, it really dug a hole for me to, basically just lay and watch TV. It was kind of a terrible place to be, but
Adam, can you clarify, and maybe we need to ask your mom too to clarify, were you in high school taking college classes?
yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. So then when you started using marijuana and during high school and you became isolated, did you feel like you were addicted to it at that time?
I thought it was completely normal. I thought, most kids do this all the time, and I didn't really see much of a difference in my behavior or my mental attitude, and it really was like I had mental illness and didn't even know about it because I was kind of maybe a lot shyer in school. It made me stop hanging out with my friends, and it made me not really enjoy life anymore. That's kind of the way that it kind of went, and I was just looking to party at that point, and that's kind of the route that I decided to go down, was the party route. And in order to do that, you got to kind of harden your heart a little bit, and just loosen the reins. Harden your heart, loosen the reins. That's what my philosophy gave.
Okay, and so it was really normalized to you, just like an everyday thing. And then you're in college. Could you share with us when your first episode of the psychosis happened?
Yeah. Okay. So the first episode. So I was kind of a stoner for the first few years. And what you do when you're smoking weed is you start to get paranoid about things that aren't really there. So I was dealing with psychosis pretty much the whole time, and it was like who's talking from where, and I was listening to people's voices that weren't in the room with me. So that's kind of how the psychosis started. But I didn't start hearing voices into my head until I did a bunch of Adderall one night, and so I did. This is sophomore year, right? So we're gonna skip over freshman year, which was it was a stoner year. I kind of hung out and I smoked weed and I played video games and I watched TV and I went to class sometimes, but I barely went to class. And I was kind of just hanging out in the dorms most of the time. And then I joined a fraternity the second year, and that kind of drove up and ramped up my partying. So I joined the fraternity the second half of the year, and then sophomore year comes by, and I don't even remember when this happened. This is one of the things I'm gonna have to get back to, like meditation and stuff. But I don't even remember when it happened. I think it would have been the spring, or it was probably the springtime maybe. And this is when I took a bunch of Adderall. And I remember talking to the spirit for a little bit, and it wanted to come in, and it was talking about how that it sold its soul to me or something like that, and maybe I sold my soul to it, and then it said that it's gonna come in, it's gonna bury me, and I was laying in bed, and the spirit came, and it was like all blue, and she came in and she said something about not doing drugs maybe, but then it turned into you need to do more drugs. Like I mean, it really was a temptress and a half. And I mean, it from that point on, it really took over my life. And you know, at first it was kind of curiosity. I'm so glad that I didn't end up staying with the hard drugs, and I just, you know, I leveled out back down to the weed, and the weed kind of it caused a bunch of havoc for me because I couldn't really talk to anybody but that voice. For the most part, it became smoking weed and talking to the voice became my ritual and my daily bread pretty much. And I stopped going to class pretty much entirely. I hung out and I smoked weed and I waited for the next party, and that's who I became, you know. And the drinking was involved too, so I'd be pretty heavy on the drinking. Uh, but it was the weed that really drove this thing because I'd wake up in the mornings and I would have to light up a bowl and smoke a bunch of weed, and it would ruin my days. I had days where I didn't talk to anybody, but I was at parties the whole time. You know, I just hung out, and they're like, "What?" I mean, they looked at me and they're like, "Why you keep talking to the sky? You know, you're just talking to nobody." And then I had to be like, well, you know, well, I didn't share my story with anybody. That was a significant point of it because I hid it as hard as I could. And this is the spirit of a girl who I saw on Facebook like one time, and I didn't even see her in person. And like, there's some sketchy things that I feel like might have happened because she was at a party one time, but then like she never came back maybe. And I didn't see her live publicly until my senior year, and this was the beginning of the year. It was initiation week that I saw her. She was with her boyfriend from a far way away. I saw her and her boyfriend, and this is totally legit. Like I could vouch for this. I wasn't on any like hard drugs or anything like that, and like this is a day that I tried to take hard drugs, but they weren't real, and they kind of did nothing. It was like a placebo effect. And anyways, I saw her and her boyfriend. Her boyfriend was yelling at her, and I saw them from afar away. So I knew this was a real girl, and I saw her using the same talk that I use. So I put two and two together, and I'm like, this shit's real, right? And anyways, I just left the party because she had a boyfriend, and this is the whole time we're kind of having a love story, if that makes sense. And but she's obviously got other things going on that don't really correlate with what was really happening. So like uh I mean, comparing it to today, she says like one or two things to me, and then she, you know, talks to everybody else like way more than she talks to me. So I'm not getting much of her talk or anything, if that makes sense. And that's one of the reasons why I got to drive her out, is because I don't receive anything good from her. It's all evil, if that makes sense.
So this girl, Adam, is a delusion, but you feel like she's a real person too at the same
No,
time.
no, no. She's an actual real person, and I actually met her at parties. I saw her at parties, I met her up close, but she never talked to me. So I would go to parties, and this is just on the weed, so I know it's real. And I wasn't blacked out drunk or anything like that. But there's a couple parties where she would hunch over next to one of my friends. I would come in and she would say, "He's the Lord. He's the Lord. He's the Lord," until I would go away because I would just be like, "You're so disgusting that I don't want to talk to you." And that's what she did, is she hunkered down next to a dude, called him the Lord, and said, "If you don't obey him, I'm gonna leave." And so I was like, I mean, what do you really want, Nikki? That's what I'd say to her. And she's like, wouldn't reply. She would just run away in her head. And so anyways, we this is a real girl, and I'm pretty sure the voice thing's real. Like if if we like, there's lots of scenarios that'll happen, but I'm pretty sure it's actually coming from her. The delusions and stuff, most of them are connected to her. And there's but there's okay, so here's where it gets interesting. So I ended up, senior year was the year that I saw her in the thing, and I was just trying to like detach myself from everybody because I knew that they knew about it, so they weren't going to tell me about it in person, so I wasn't going to trust a liar, right? And anyways, I couldn't trust any of my friends. I was going wild. I was paranoid that we were going to get raided by the FBI. And it was literally a hell year for me. Like I had no family, no friends, and then the voice thing kept saying it was going around sleeping with all my friends. And so it made my life a living hell. So the voice really got engraved in me. And then it said that it was going to be friends with all my friends. And I mean, to this day, I don't really know what happened, but I could only assume that she was a drug dealer doing heroin with them all. And she had a husband, so she dated this guy that I saw at the one initiation ceremony that she was with, that who was yelling at her. And anyway, she stuck with that guy. So I don't think she was sleeping around with these people, but she was definitely in my apartment complex many times where I was trying to lay in bed and get some sleep. She was yelling out windows. She was bashing people's doors in. She was just acting all sorts of crazy when I was trying to sleep in my own little cell of a box thing at the apartment complex. But anyways, like I would go try and chase her down and she would be gone. And then my friends would act all nitty gritty like they just did something. They're trying to hide something. So it's literally her tactic was, get as close as she can to me and then try and make me feel terrible because of what she's doing. And anyways, she tortured me for the rest of that year. They got into my cell phone a couple times and started yelling at me. And I remember this specifically. They had this all set up, and like it's the weirdest app ever. But once I started yelling back, they shut it off.
Okay.
And anyways, like so the things that so that might have all been a delusion. I can't confirm any of that. But anyways, what I can confirm is later on when I'm getting to jobs and stuff, she's the only thing that she's saying is you got to stop vaping. Said everything else is okay, but you really got to stop vaping. That's my biggest no-no for you. And anyways, I ended up going to the mental hospital once where I stopped vaping, and she showed up at my workplace a couple days later. This is totally legit. She's in a black SUV, standing right outside of the black SUV. And I just walked past her because I couldn't deal with her BS. And this is a real girl, though. That's the weirdest part. And so she's kind of been stalking me ever since. I've been on and off jobs. I've been on marijuana most of the time. And that's why that's why I couldn't hold down a job. And that's why her voice is allowed to get in, or at least was allowed to get in, is because my marijuana addiction opened. I mean, essentially, I want to say it's like opening a portal from hell. Like you have this person who's spitting you the most evil stuff because they hate you so much because you rejected them or whatever. And I mean, it's one of those things that I feel righteous in what I've done, but she just looks terrible for what she done.
Adam,
Because
that sounds awful that that you were experiencing that and not knowing if it was a delusion or not. But when this was all happening, were you in denial that marijuana was causing these hallucinations?
yes, I totally thought it was the nicotine. That was one of the things that she got me with. One of the tricks that she comes up with is it's not the marijuana that causes the psychosis, it's the nicotine. So if you're gonna be smoking nicotine, you might as well be smoking marijuana. That's one of the things that she got me with. Another thing that she really likes to get me with is you can't be rich and famous unless you smoke the marijuana. And that's her lifestyle that she tries to sell to me. And I'm, at this point, I'm like, I don't want any of that crap. I just moved it all to her side. And then I'm going to quit the marijuana. And I already did. And it's already over. And it's going to take a few more months, but she's going to be gone. She's not going to be able to talk to me. And when she can't talk to me, what's she gonna do? Because I'm the only one that treats her good anymore. All of her friends know she's full of BS, and they don't even want to hang out with her anymore. So
So Adam, when you first experienced the psychosis, you mentioned that you took Adderall that night. Were you blaming it on the Adderall that contribute to the psychosis, and you were in denial for a few years that marijuana was contributing to your
yeah,
psychosis? Okay.
I think so. The thing is, if I saw and read more cases about it, I would be a little bit more knowing of what's going on. But I don't know if you could get the strict auditory hallucinations with just marijuana. My assumption is that you need a little bit harder substance to get it in, but the marijuana keeps it going. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's kind of like a fire's burning of the psychosis. And then if you add the Adderall to it, it just was like ignited it even more, the way I understand it. But we do have people that understand psychosis much more than I do. So maybe in the end, we can talk about that more. How many times have you been hospitalized for psychosis?
I just twice, right? Yeah, it's just twice, and then I went to jail once.
Okay.
Yeah. So the hospital experience, um, it the first time it drove me mad, and the voices they went away after a few days, but they keep coming in and checking on you. And this is with this is stop smoking marijuana, and then okay, so I was smoking marijuana when I went in, and then takes about 3 or 4 days of healthy mindfulness to get the voices out, but they keep coming back tempting you. So you got the thing that I'm fully invested in is that if you stop marijuana for 6 months, they aren't allowed back in your life. That's what I'm invested on. If that doesn't happen, I'm gonna have to rethink it a little bit, maybe cut out the vape too, and the caffeine and a few other things. But I'm fully invested with the idea that getting the marijuana out for 6 months gets the voices out for good. I don't think it's gonna have to do anything with the nicotine or the caffeine because they aren't mind altering. They're more they aren't mind altering as much as the marijuana. I mean, they're supposed to be a little bit better for you in ways, but I mean they aren't good for you, but they don't make you trip out and hallucinate.
Yeah.
But
And so was it this last hospitalization that you finally started accepting that marijuana and I know you've gotten diagnosed with cannabis induced psychosis. Your mother has shared that with me. But even though you had that diagnosis in the past and you didn't accept it, was this last hospitalization where you accepted that yes, marijuana is the main contributing factor? Now you've agreed to stay off the marijuana for 6 months.
yes, well I'm cutting it out for good. That's what I say. But anyways, so I was in Idaho and I brought marijuana into Idaho, which is totally illegal, right? And anyways, I smoked the marijuana in Idaho, and with all these factors pressuring me, with Nikki, she's stalking me, so she's right outside the house, and I saw her in Idaho too. And anyways, so I'm getting stalked, and I'm smoking weed, and my mind goes straight to hell. And I see her in a hallucination. She's getting crucified in front of a crowd of people. And anyways, I freaked out a little bit because I can't close my eyes anymore, or else I'll hallucinate that. But I can't stay awake because then I'm gonna go crazy. And I'm sitting in bed, and one of my best friends from high school's voice comes out, and I don't hear voices from other people that aren't there usually. but this is where they started popping out of nowhere. My friend from high school is telling me that he's gay and he's gonna have sex with another friend from high school that's a dude in my backyard. And anyways, it was the biggest hell portal that I've ever opened before. And it destroyed me and it made me go manic crazy. So I went to the stage concert that was near us and I started screaming my head off. And eventually the cops came and I ran, I got away from them. But I ended up going home and freaking out for a couple days, a little bit manic. I was sleeping, but then the last minute of it, I went a little bit crazy and was yelling at home. And then these guys called the mental hospital on me, so I went to the mental hospital.
I mean, your mom and your dad called for help?
Yeah.
You have a good mom and dad. Look it
Right.
up.
I mean, it worked out in the end. Like I said, I'm done with the marijuana. It's stupid. It really just ramps up all the terrible stuff that's happening. It makes you paranoid, and can't tell what's real at this point. What was the Idaho trip for her? Like, I mean, it's not that I really care too much, but I want to know because it's such a big part of my life at this point that it's made me crazy and it's brought me to hell and back. I mean, so yeah, I mean, at this point, I'm dealing with the psychosis. I'm telling her every day, you aren't going to have this for very long. I'm not going to be talking to you for very long. You're literally not even going to be able to get it. And I'm 1 month sober. And I went to the beach the other day. And, right. And I went to the beach the other day and we ended up blocking the voice out. So, I mean, my psychosis was kind of with everybody on the beach. So I'm still kind of tripping. I hallucinate a little bit. But for the most part, we blocked her out for a solid 3 or 4 hours. And that's the longest I've gone with sanity. I wake up in the morning and she's already bumbling in my face how I'm going to die today. And, right? I mean, it's terrible, terrible stuff. And I'm like, girlfriend, dude, if you're thinking about that stuff so much, you need to, get help or something. And I mean, her claim is that they're clean and sober. And that's the only reason why she's going so bad. But I doubt that. I've heard she's on really hard drugs. I've heard she's smoking weed. So that's why she hallucinates so much. But anyways, what I'm working on is getting the hallucinations out because what happens is she'll want to come in. She'll be like, "Hey, can I come in?" And since I've only been 1 month sober, I can't say no. I'll be like, "Sure, whatever." And then she gives me a hallucination where she's either coming to my door or trying to have sex with me or something like of that nature. So I mean, it's really gross in nature and it really freaks people out. So it's something that I've been working on driving out through the marijuana, not using marijuana, and that's the thing I just got to stay off the marijuana, and I mean eventually it's going towards zero. So it's kind of like a wave. So what she'll do is she'll get really mad, and then she'll get really happy, and then she'll get really mad, she'll get really happy. And I'm stable, so I'm like a pretty high energy too. So I'm like up here a little bit. I don't really get depressed anymore or anything like that because I'm not using. And I mean, it feels great because I'm on my meds and everything, and it feels really good because I'm not using. But for her, she goes through a cycle of I mean, I guess it's actually my cycle too. It's like a come home, you should be here. And then it's like, oh my gosh, you need to leave. This is terrible and it's so unhealthy. And then she's like, why do I need to leave? And I'm just like, because you won't come home, because you won't come back to me or anything like that. And then she's like, well, I'm never going to come back to you if you're using. And then I'm like, well, I'm never going to use again. And then she's like, well, what are you going to do about that? I'm like, I mean, it's all we got's time, baby. And then we kind of like argue like that. But eventually the marijuana's out already. And eventually I can tell what's going to happen is she's just not going to be able to talk to me. And if she is going out and stalking me in real life, she'll probably be curious to what I'm doing and what I'm trying to say. So then she'll come over. But if she's not stalking me in real life anymore and she loves her husband again, then I'm just going to move on with my life. It's going to be so easy for me to move on.
Well, Adam, I am so impressed that you are working so hard to get rid of the voices, get rid of the hallucinations so you can find that peace. And that was like really amazing to hear that you had that 3 or 4 hours of peace when you were at the beach with your family. And I hope you have more moments like that, and those moments get they're with you more and more. And I, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing this with us. Takes a lot of courage to be very honest with what's going on with you, and how marijuana has you know, really caused you a lot of pain. So I can say that, and I probably could speak for everybody on this call, that we totally support you in your healing and your recovery, and we're so glad that you've decided not to use anymore. And I'm also really glad that you have a really supportive mom who's by your side. So, you know, I don't know, do you ever ask her what's real and what's not real when you're having those confusing times?
Oh, all the time. Yeah, and like I said, dude, feel free to ask me questions. I'm open to skepticism, but this girl has, I mean, I have real evidence of her messaging me on Facebook. So this girl's real, and she has the same mental disorders. She admitted to it. And this is like,
Well, the good news is we get to focus on you. You know, I think that's the best thing. You know, every day, each minute of the day, think about you and what's best for you and what's going on with your family, you know. So if you're getting distracted by it, I know you're developing those tools to keep the focus back on what's healthy and safe for you. And so I just keep encouraging you to do that. And I know you've got doctors around you too that are guiding you and doing that. And let's ask your mom a little bit of questions now. Mary, did you want to add anything to this?
Not really. I mean, she is definitely a real person.
Okay.
But all the interactions that he's having with her, I know he feels like they're real, but I believe that they're, you know, hallucinatory. So.
I mean, I could show you her Facebook messages.
No,
I 100% believe you, Adam. I do. I 100% believe you.
So, I mean,
okay?
yeah, I'm fine. But like, so I saw a girl that looked like her yesterday, and I approached this girl and I was like, "Are you Nikki?" And she's like, "No." And I looked at her straight face to face, but it didn't really look like her. So I mean, it's kind of funny, and it's like I'm recovering, and like I'm meeting all these girls that kind of look like her. But so I mean, that's kind of what it is. But the Jeep moment, I remember very vividly going to parties 2 times when she was with 2 of my brothers, and she wouldn't let me into her headspace because she was so consumed with the dude. She was like this. And she stayed like this during the whole party.
Oh, wow.
And I remember those vivid moments, and I hate her so much for doing that. I really do, because for me, I go around meeting everybody at parties. And that's my goal, ambition, you know? But for her, it was staying with the dude that she's with and going like this and whispering in his freaking ear. It was so disgusting that it threw me off of her, and it made me, I mean, it gave her the worst image that I've ever had of anybody ever. And that's what she is right now. And I tried to save her, but it's so tough to do. It's really tough to do.
Yeah, like I just encourage you to keep focusing on yourself, you know, think about what's, you know, how to take care of yourself, which is easier said than done, right? Even with or without psychosis, right? So I know I'm just like really impressed that you're really sharing these, I mean, like really scary moments. So
I'm an open book. I'm down to share pretty much anything. But like I said, like I don't really remember the 2 years of college that I went through, because it wasn't only the marijuana, I was drinking a lot too. So the alcohol made me forget things, and it wasn't short-term forgetful memory, but it's long-term forgetful memory, and that's induced by the marijuana. So as long as I stay off marijuana, which I'm confident that I will this time, because I got such a negative disdain for my last trip, you know, I don't want to see people getting crucified in a hallucination. It's the worst trip you could possibly have.
Well, you talked about going to jail one time.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit more about that?
So this is what I was using at home. So I would go to the garage and I would be smoking dabs, which are a high concentration of marijuana, and I would be drinking a lot. I wasn't using any hard drugs at the time that I went to jail, but I was drinking a lot and I was smoking a lot, and these voices were telling me that everybody in the world was watching me. So I was in full belief that everybody in the world was on camera watching me at this very moment. And they said, "What are you going to do about it?" You know? And they kept pushing me and pushing me. And eventually I was like, I'm going to go out and, I'm going to destroy things because you guys are so freaking annoying. So I went out with spray paint and a hammer and went and tagged a bunch of banks and then spray painted a Walmart and then threw a hammer through the window. And like, I know that it was just paranoia from the dabs, and it was a combination of mental illness and substance abuse. But I mean, what was going on through my head is everybody's watching me, so why shouldn't I, pay everybody back for watching me? And this is something that I still kind of struggle with. I always think that I can talk to anybody I want just by talking in open air. And it's super toxic belief to have, but it's slowly going away, coming down from the marijuana.
I think you speaking out will help other people understand that it's real. I mean, especially to you, and that it can be really scary and have really devastating consequences, like ending up in jail, and not knowing and forgetting things. I think that sounds scary too, to forget.
Adam, how did marijuana affect your social life?
I can tell you, even when I stopped smoking marijuana for one day and I started just drinking the beer, I would have a social butterfly effect. And I would just run around the party meeting everybody and having a good time. But if I smoked the marijuana, I would sit there and I would talk to the voice that was in kind of the left corner of the room. And I would sit there and I would just talk to the voice, and unable to do anything, I kind of had to have the voice going along with me. But this is kind of the small rooms that were people that I knew, and I knew they were kind of all kind of jackasses. But anyways, like, I would just kind of sit there and then I would kind of venture out on my own or do something else. But it would be so hard to meet people because with the marijuana, you can't look people in the eyes for very long. You smoke the marijuana and you got to kind of bow down to them a little bit like this, and then you kind of shut off everything in here, and you kind of just kind of roam around like this. And I use my inner voice a lot, which people shouldn't be able to hear, but maybe they do. I don't know. And anyways, like, I would kind of sit around using my inner voice, trying to communicate telepathically with these people, and I would not say anything until everybody shut up. And that was like kind of my vibe, and it was terrible. It was angry, and it was just a hard person to be around. So I totally understand why everybody started blocking me out and everything in my original friend group. But
Adam, are you getting out more now that you've stopped using marijuana?
the beach the other day and I talked to like 20 people, I didn't even know them. So like I was just hanging out and like people would be showing up and I'd be like, "Hey, how's it going?" I wasn't drinking, I wasn't using any substances, just, well, nicotine. But I was just hanging out and I would talk to everybody. And that's how I am naturally. So I freaking love getting back there. But it's still gonna take it's right. It's still gonna take some time because I still have the voice and I still have the hallucinations. So even when even like so um yeah, that's one thing that I worry about is if it doesn't go away in 6 months, then I'm gonna have to drop, a lot of other things too, and I'm gonna have to work way harder. But I'm pretty confident that it's just gonna disappear within 6 months. And I'm pretty confident that it's just the marijuana that ramps up your thyroid. It ramps up your inner voice and your outer voice. I mean, it ramps up everything to kind of, it's a terrible cocktail to have when you have bad.
Adam, how long have you been sober?
I've never actually done sobriety from the marijuana for 3 months. So that's one of my new milestones. Is last time it was 2 months, and she was not there throughout the day. She just came in little snippets. So that's something that I'm looking forward to. But after 3 months, like, she could be gone in 3 months. I'm looking forward to it.
How old are you now, Adam?
I'm 25.
25. Well, you're very well spoken. So you're really explaining things well. What is your most urgent message to people who are thinking about using marijuana?
Let's see. So,
would you recommend that people use marijuana?
I would say, I would just throw them a statistic and say 95% of marijuana users don't enjoy going to work in the morning. Right? So if you smoke the marijuana, you might start to believe everybody from your office is watching you. And you're going to have to be mindful of that everywhere you go. So if you don't want to have to be mindful of that, let me tell you, it's like being thrown into a prison. So if you don't want to have to be mindful of that, don't smoke the marijuana. You know what I mean?
Good advice.
I think that's the biggest thing for smoking the marijuana is you're going to bring evil spirits into your house. Whether or not you know what's happening, it's just gonna happen. So don't even use it, because the good life, the family life, the home life, and all that stuff is way more worth it. And and this is like I'm super excited.
What do you want people that are using marijuana and that might be experiencing psychosis to know? What message do you give them? There's
a direct link with the marijuana, the paranoia, the always being watched, the voices in your head. There's a direct link between the marijuana and the stuff. And as long as you stop using, which marijuana is not fun when you're having a bad time, as long as you stop using, you're gonna be okay. I'm 1 month sober and my memories coming back, my dreams are coming back, and I don't have to worry about where I left my water bottle, because I remember where I left my water bottle. You know what I mean? It's something so simple, but it feels so good to be able to remember things like that. And you aren't alone in recovery. So, but what I would say is, it might take about a month, but I think if you're society will re-induct you. You aren't going to lose anything. People are going to forgive you for using the marijuana. You aren't going to be a permanent terrible person. You just got to stop using it. It's as simple as that.
That is such a powerful message, Adam. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Every Brain Matters podcast. It's important that you share this podcast with your family and friends, legislators, educators, or any stakeholders, so we can raise awareness and start to end this public health crisis that has been caused by the predatory addiction for profit marijuana industry. Thank you.